The sky above Earth suddenly darkened as massive alien ships appeared out of nowhere. The first sign of trouble came from the skies, but no one could have imagined what was about to happen. The peaceful blue sky the humans had always taken for granted was now filled with black, ominous shapes that blocked out the sun. These ships were unlike anything the people of Earth had ever seen before. They were huge, their surfaces gleaming with an eerie metallic sheen. Across the globe, panic spread quickly. Sarah Carter, the captain of a military base in the heart of the United States, was the first to receive the news. She sat in a small room, staring at a screen showing live footage of the alien ships hovering above major cities around the world. Her heart raced as she tried to keep her cool. She had seen enough of the reports and rumors to know that something terrible was coming. But this was worse than anything she had imagined. "Captain, you need to see this," a voice called from the doorway. It was one of her soldiers, Lieutenant Thomas, his face pale and tense. She stood up quickly and rushed over to him. Together, they watched the news feed from across the globe. The footage was chaotic, cities like New York, London, and Beijing already under attack. Strange alien forces were marching through the streets, their weapons glowing as they destroyed anything in their path. Sarah's mind raced. "What are we dealing with here, Thomas?" she asked, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was pounding. "I don't know, Captain. No one does. These aren't any species we've encountered before," Thomas replied. "They're advanced, too advanced." A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine. Earth had fought off threats before, from rogue nations to alien invaders, but never like this. These aliens were clearly more powerful, more prepared, and Earth had no defense. She turned to face her team. "Get me General Ivan," she ordered. Minutes later, the general's face appeared on the screen. He looked just as concerned as Sarah felt, though he tried his best to keep calm. "Sarah, we don't have much time," he said. "These invaders are unlike anything we've ever faced. Our best weapons are useless against them. We're on the brink of losing everything." Sarah clenched her fists. The words "we're losing" hit her harder than any physical blow could. She wasn't about to give up without a fight, not after everything humanity had been through to survive. "We need to know everything we can about them," Sarah said, her voice firm. "Their weapons, their ships, their weaknesses, anything." "We're working on it," General Ivan replied. "But right now, we have to focus on evacuation. Thousands of people are already trapped in cities. The alien forces are sweeping through, and there's nothing we can do to stop them." Sarah's face tightened. She couldn't just sit back and watch Earth fall apart. They had to do something. "I'm not running. I'm going to find a way to stop this," Sarah said, her tone determined. She glanced at Lieutenant Thomas. "We'll organize a counterattack. We can't just wait for the aliens to destroy us." "You're right, Captain," Thomas agreed. "But we need information. We need to know how their technology works. If we don't, we're just throwing everything we have at them and hoping for the best." Before Sarah could respond, an alarm went off and the screen flickered. The news feed switched to another broadcast, a live transmission from the alien fleet itself. A cold, robotic voice echoed through the room, sending a chill down Sarah's spine. "This is the Argarian fleet. We come in peace," the voice said. "Surrender now or face destruction." The transmission ended abruptly, and the screen returned to chaos. The alien forces were showing no mercy. Sarah stared at the screen, her mind spinning. Peace. This wasn't peace. This was an invasion. "We can't let them take Earth," Sarah muttered to herself. As the hours passed, Earth's situation became more desperate. Governments scrambled to form an alliance, but there was little time. The aliens were already in the process of annihilating major cities, their weapons sending shockwaves through buildings. The world's greatest military leaders were lost for ideas, their most advanced technology failing against the alien invaders. On the front lines, Earth's soldiers fought valiantly, but the aliens were too strong, too prepared. Sarah knew she couldn't allow her troops to waste their lives in a hopeless battle. She needed to think. She needed to act. She called her team together again, her mind already racing with plans. "We may be losing this war, but it's not over yet," Sarah said, looking at each of her officers. "We have something they don't. We have humanity's will to survive. If we can figure out how to strike back, we can turn this around. We're not finished." But deep down, Sarah knew the odds were against them. The aliens had been waiting for the right moment, and now they had launched their attack with precision. Earth's defenses were failing, and humanity was on the brink of extinction. Just as the hopelessness began to settle in, Sarah received a message, one that changed everything. "Captain, we have a report from one of our satellites," Lieutenant Thomas said, his voice shaking with excitement. "We've detected something strange. It's not an alien ship, and it's not from Earth." Sarah leaned in, her heart pounding. What could it be? Was this humanity's chance, or was it just another trap set by the invaders? The message was clear. Something, or someone, was coming to Earth's aid. Sarah knew one thing for sure. The fight for Earth was far from over. The alien forces had already taken over most major cities, their forces sweeping across the globe with terrifying speed and precision. What had started as a shocking invasion had turned into a nightmare for Earth's defenders. There was no place on Earth where humanity was safe anymore. Cities were in flames. Military bases had been reduced to rubble. Governments were scrambling to keep the people calm, but panic was quickly spreading. At the military base where Captain Sarah Carter was stationed, the situation was getting worse by the hour. The news was grim. More alien ships were arriving, and every attempt to counter their assault had failed. Earth's most advanced weaponry couldn't even put a scratch on the alien vessels. The weapons the humans had relied on for decades, the tools that had kept their enemies at bay, were useless against the invaders. Sarah paced back and forth in the command room, her mind racing. The countdown to total destruction was ticking in the background. The news was broadcasting stories of terror from every corner of the world. People were frightened, and the fear was contagious. Even the bravest soldiers were beginning to question if victory was even possible. "We're outgunned, Captain," Lieutenant Thomas said quietly, standing by the door. "There's no way to fight back. If this keeps up, we'll be wiped out by morning." Sarah refused to accept that. She wouldn't let Earth go down like this, not without a fight. "We have to find a weakness," she said, her voice sharp and filled with determination. "There has to be something, anything, that can turn the tide." Her mind was working overtime. She knew that humanity couldn't keep relying on conventional tactics. The aliens were simply too advanced. It was time to think outside the box, to use strategies that the invaders would never expect. "We need to regroup. Everyone who's left," Sarah said. "We're going to find a way to hit them where it hurts, even if it means taking risks." But as she spoke, her voice faltered slightly. Was this just a desperate hope? Or did they truly have a chance? She glanced at the screen. The alien ships in orbit looked like giants in the sky, casting shadows over the Earth below. In their shadow, humanity seemed small, insignificant. "I don't think we can keep up this fight much longer," General Ivan's voice crackled over the radio. "We've lost contact with most of the military units around the world. Our forces are decimated." Sarah clenched her fists. General Ivan was a man of experience, and hearing his voice so full of doubt was unsettling. But Sarah refused to give in. She could see the desperation in his eyes, even through the communication feed. They were running out of time, and the stakes had never been higher. "Keep fighting," Sarah said. "We still have people alive. We still have soldiers. We can't just give up now." As she was about to speak again, a sudden interruption shook the room. A new transmission appeared on the screen, a live broadcast coming from a major government satellite that had just been restored. Sarah rushed over to see what was happening. The image on the screen was fuzzy at first, but it soon cleared up. What appeared before them was an unidentified object, something moving fast through space, heading directly for Earth. It wasn't one of the alien ships. It wasn't from any human fleet either. The shape was strange, a shimmering blur as it cut through space. "Captain, what is that?" Lieutenant Thomas asked, his voice filled with disbelief. The shape on the screen was unlike anything they had ever seen. It didn't belong to any known species or technology. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She was seeing something no one had expected. Could this be some kind of reinforcement? Or was it yet another trick from the aliens? "Send a team to investigate," Sarah ordered. "I don't care what it takes. We need answers. Now." Minutes later, the base's satellite team was able to make sense of the new object. The report came in. The object was approaching Earth at incredible speed. It was coming from deep space, and it didn't belong to any of the alien factions that had attacked the planet. The message was clear. They weren't alone. A strange feeling began to spread through Sarah's chest. Was this a sign? Was this the help they had been hoping for? But there was no time to dwell on it. The alien forces were closing in, and Earth's defenses were crumbling by the minute. They had to prepare for what was coming, whether it was an ally or another enemy. "We'll find out what this is. If it's help, then we need to be ready for whatever comes next," Sarah said, looking at her team. "Are we really going to risk it?" Lieutenant Thomas asked, his voice tinged with fear. "We don't know what this thing is, Sarah. It could be worse than the aliens." Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the screen. "We don't have a choice. We have to try something. If we don't, we'll lose everything." As the alien ships continued their relentless assault on Earth, there was a brief glimmer of hope. The object, whatever it was getting closer. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this might be humanity's last chance. She turned to her officers. "Get ready. Prepare for a potential ally. Or an enemy. We won't know until it arrives." As they scrambled to prepare for the unknown, one thing was certain. Humanity had just entered a new phase of the war. The aliens had brought their might to Earth. But now, something else was coming. Something mysterious. Something that could either save them or destroy them completely. Sarah couldn't help but feel a surge of determination. They weren't done yet. Earth would not go down without a fight. The true battle for humanity's survival was just beginning. The clock was ticking. Each second felt heavier than the last. Earth's forces had dwindled to nothing, entire cities had fallen, and alien forces were tightening their grip on the planet. But just when everything seemed hopeless, the mysterious object that had appeared on the radar came closer, drawing the eyes of every soldier and civilian alike. Sarah's heart raced as the unknown craft entered Earth's atmosphere. She stared at the large screen in front of her. The strange object was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It wasn't alien, that much was certain. The design was sleek, angular, almost organic in nature. A soft, pulsating glow emanated from its core, casting an eerie light across the military base. There was no sign of hostile intent, no weapons visible on its surface. Yet the unknown lingered like a shadow over their already precarious situation. "This is it," Lieutenant Thomas said, his voice low but filled with awe. "Whatever this is, it's going to change everything." Sarah felt a sense of urgency course through her. The aliens had already made their move. Earth's resistance had been shattered, and their chances of survival seemed slim. But now, there was a glimmer of something they hadn't dared hope for. An unknown ship arriving at the most critical moment. "Do we have any idea who or what this is?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "I'm still waiting for a response from the satellite team," Thomas replied, his eyes glued to the screen. "But they're telling me that the ship is unlike anything in our records. It's not a human craft. It's not from the aliens we've been fighting either." The mystery deepened. The questions mounted in Sarah's mind. Why was it here? What did it want? Was it a trap? But even as the uncertainty clawed at her, She couldn't shake the feeling that this could be the turning point in their fight. As the mysterious ship neared the ground, an eerie silence settled over the base. The air seemed to thrum with anticipation. The ship hovered just above Earth's surface, its glow intensifying. Then, without warning, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through Sarah's chest, deep and resonant. The craft slowly descended, coming to a halt on an empty stretch of land just outside the military base. "It's landing," Lieutenant Thomas said, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to remain cautious. They had been tricked before. The alien invaders had been deceptive, their words about peace a lie. She couldn't afford to make the same mistake again. But her curiosity and the hope this new arrival brought with it was too strong to ignore. "I'll go," Sarah said, her decision made. "We can't let this opportunity slip away. Everyone else, stay back. If this is something dangerous, we'll handle it as a team. But if it's help, then we need to be ready." The team quickly prepared a small group of soldiers, including Lieutenant Thomas, to accompany Sarah as they moved out. They couldn't afford to take unnecessary risks, but Sarah knew this might be their only shot. If this craft had answers, if it held the key to their survival, she would take it. As they approached the landing site, Sarah's eyes never left the ship. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, smooth and reflective. The air around it seemed to shimmer as if the fabric of reality itself was bending in the presence of this strange vessel. The craft's descent came to an abrupt stop. The soft hum faded, and everything fell eerily silent. Sarah and her team kept their distance, weapons raised and ready, but with caution in every movement. They had no idea what kind of being could be inside this ship. The last thing they needed was another surprise. Without warning, a hatch on the ship's side opened. A low mechanical hiss echoed through the air as the hatch slid smoothly to the ground. A figure appeared in the opening, a humanoid figure, but it was unlike any human. The being stood tall, its body encased in shining, translucent armor that seemed to pulse with energy. The face was obscured, but the presence it exuded was undeniable. This was no enemy. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the ally they had been waiting for? The alien forces were everywhere. And now, this mysterious visitor had arrived, almost as if on cue. She stepped forward slowly, unsure of what to expect. "I'm Captain Sarah Carter," she called out, her voice steady but filled with the weight of the moment. "We don't know who or what you are, but Earth needs help. Will you help us?" For a moment, there was only silence. The figure in the shimmering armor didn't move, didn't speak. Sarah's grip tightened on her weapon, ready for any sudden movements. But then, slowly, the figure raised one hand. "Human," the being spoke, its voice a deep, resonating tone that vibrated through the air. It was neither cold nor warm, but it had the weight of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "I am not your enemy." The words hung in the air like a promise. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Not their enemy. Was this truly an ally? The figure's voice continued. "We've been watching your planet. We've seen your strength, your will to survive. I am here to offer you what you need to defeat the invaders who threaten your world." Hope surged within Sarah's chest. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, the moment that could change everything. "We will fight with you," the being said, "but only if you are ready." Ready. The word hung heavy in the air. Could humanity, battered and beaten, truly be ready to face the alien invaders? Could they, together with this mysterious being, push back the overwhelming threat that now loomed over them? "There's no turning back now," Sarah whispered, turning to her team. "Prepare yourselves. This is the chance we've been waiting for. Let's take it." The battle for Earth was far from over. But with this unexpected ally by their side, Sarah and her team knew one thing for certain. Humanity's will to survive had not been broken. The fight was just beginning, and now, for the first time in days, there was a flicker of hope. "Where do we start?" Sarah asked, determination seeping into her voice. Neris gestured to the pods. You and your soldiers will train with them. You will learn to harness their power. But know this, these weapons are not infallible. They will demand sacrifice, and there will be those who cannot bear the weight of their power. The weight of his words hung in the air. Sarah's heart clenched. Sacrifice. It was a word they had all become too familiar with. But there was no other choice. Earth's survival depended on this. They had come this far, and they could not back down now. Let's begin, Sarah said firmly. We have no time to waste. As they approached the glowing pods, Sarah couldn't help but feel a surge of hope, a hope that they might just stand a chance against the overwhelming alien forces. This new alliance with Neris, with the mysterious Scythian order, was humanity's last hope. But it was also a test of their strength, their unity, and their will to fight. As Sarah's soldiers began the process of training with the new weapons, the weight of what was to come pressed heavily on her shoulders. They weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for their very survival, and the survival of everything they held dear. And in this final push, they would need every ounce of strength they had, and perhaps more. The battle for Earth had entered a new phase. With Neris's help, humanity might just be able to turn the tide. But they had to prove they were worthy of this incredible gift. They had to prove they could wield the power of the unknown and fight for their world like never before. As Sarah looked to the sky, the sound of distant explosions echoed across the base. The battle was far from over. But now, at last, humanity had a fighting chance. The days following the arrival of the Scythian technology were some of the most intense in human history. Sarah and her team were in constant training, adjusting to the unfamiliar but potent weapons that had been gifted to them. The pods, once empty, now contained advanced energy weapons, their forms sleek and unpredictable, responding to their wielder's will. As each soldier learned to harness the power within, it became clear that this was no ordinary battle tactic. But even with their newfound strength, the sense of urgency never ceased. The Draken forces continued to advance, their ships now closer than ever. The threat of annihilation was ever present, looming over them like an unstoppable storm. They couldn't afford to waste any time. Sarah stood in the center of the base, watching as her soldiers sparred with the energy weapons. The flashes of light from the weapons crackled through the air, casting fleeting shadows over the hardened faces of those who fought. There was no joy in their movements, only determination, only the instinct to survive. But beneath that determination was something else, something deeper, something that Neris had mentioned earlier, the belief in victory, the strength to see this through. It wasn't easy. The weapons were powerful, but they demanded something of their wielders. They were an extension of the user's will, their confidence, their belief. The stronger the belief, the stronger the weapon. The more doubts that lingered, the more the weapon faltered. It wasn't a simple matter of firing and hitting a target. The weapon would only respond fully if the user had absolute faith in their victory. Sarah herself had been struggling with this. Every night, she laid awake, her mind racing with thoughts of failure. Could they really do this? Could they really push back the invaders? The doubt crept in like a slow poison, but she couldn't allow it to consume her. Not now. Not when the fate of the entire planet was at stake. Captain Carter. A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Thomas, his face etched with the exhaustion of weeks spent in constant training. Report, Lieutenant, Sarah said, her voice firm, but weary. We've made progress, Thomas said, holding up his energy weapon. The soldiers are getting better with the new tech, but some of them are struggling to adapt. The weapon, it's not like anything we've ever used before. It's more like it's alive, responding to us, to our emotions. It's hard for some to control that. Sarah nodded. She had felt it too. The pulse of the weapon wasn't just mechanical, it was an extension of their very will. If they didn't control their emotions, their fears, the weapons would become erratic. It was a delicate balance between focus and chaos, but there was no time for hesitation. Then we train harder, Sarah said, her voice hardening. We'll break through this. We have no choice. Thomas gave a grim nod before walking away to continue his training. Sarah watched him go, her mind still reeling with the implications of their situation. The time for doubt was over. They had no choice but to push forward. That night, as the base settled into an uneasy silence, Sarah met with Neris once again. The figure stood in the shadow of the enormous ship, the soft hum of its engines filling the air like the sound of a distant storm. "You've trained hard, Captain," Neris said, his voice as calm as ever, but Sarah could detect a note of something else in it. "But the real challenge begins tomorrow." "We're ready," Sarah said, though the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. They weren't just ready to fight. They were ready to win. But victory seemed so far away. Would their newfound weapons be enough to tip the scales? "The Draken forces will come in full force," Neris continued, his glowing eyes scanning the horizon. "They have underestimated you, but that will change. Their commanders are cunning and their forces vast. But your humanity, your spirit, that is your greatest strength. It will be tested." "I understand," Sarah said, "and I'll make sure my team is ready. We won't let this planet fall, not while we still breathe." Neris nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Remember this, Captain. The Draken are not just enemies of Earth, they are enemies of all who resist oppression. The power to defeat them is within you, but it lies in your unity. Trust your soldiers. Trust your people." With that, he turned and disappeared into the shadows of the ship, leaving Sarah with his final words echoing in her mind. Unity. Trust. Those words resonated deeply. She had known all along that this war wasn't just about advanced weapons or military tactics. It was about the human will to fight for freedom, for survival, and the strength that came from standing together. The next morning, the base was abuzz with activity. Soldiers ran drills, preparing for the coming assault. Fighters were armed, their energy weapons pulsing with a soft glow. The air was thick with anticipation, but there was a newfound sense of focus, a quiet determination. They were ready, ready to face whatever came next. Sarah took a deep breath and addressed her team. "We've trained for this moment. We've prepared ourselves for the battle of our lives. The Draken think they can conquer Earth. They think they can wipe us out. But they're wrong. They're wrong because we have something they can never understand. We have the will to survive. And we're going to show them exactly what happens when humanity fights back." A cheer rose up from the soldiers around her, their voices filled with renewed purpose. They weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for each other, for their homes, for their future. And they wouldn't stop until they had won. The battle for Earth was about to begin. And this time, humanity wasn't just going to survive. They were going to fight back with everything they had. And the Dragon would learn the hard way. Never underestimate the power of humanity's wrath. The ground shook as the first wave of Dragon ships pierced the atmosphere, descending rapidly toward Earth's surface. The sky above the base was streaked with trails of smoke as the enemy fleet appeared in full force, an imposing sight. Their ships, massive and sleek, glided silently toward their targets with an air of finality, as if Earth's fate was already sealed. Inside the command center, the tension was palpable. Sarah stood at the head of the room, watching the holographic displays showing the Dragon ships moving into position. She could feel the weight of every moment pressing down on her. This was it, the moment they had prepared for. She couldn't afford to let fear take hold now, not when the future of humanity rested on the line. "We've got incoming," Lieutenant Thomas said, his voice steady but tense. "They're coming in fast, Captain. We need to launch immediately." Sarah gave him a sharp nod, her eyes locked on the map. Her mind raced, but her decision was clear. It was time to fight back. "Deploy the fleet," Sarah commanded, her voice resolute. "All units, initiate strike protocols. Prepare for combat." Her orders were swiftly carried out. The base buzzed with activity as fighter jets scrambled into the sky, their engines roaring to life. The energy weapons on the jets hummed as they powered up, their new alien technology flickering in response to the pilots' wills. It was humanity's first true test of their new power. As the human fleet ascended into the atmosphere, Sarah's mind returned to the teachings of Neris, the strength to believe in their victory, to trust in the power they had been given. The weapons they wielded were unlike anything Earth had ever known. But it wasn't just about firepower. It was about heart. It was about believing that they could overcome the impossible. "Sarah," came a voice over the comms. "Captain Ryan from the front lines. We're in position, ready to strike. We'll give them everything we've got." She felt a surge of pride hearing Ryan's voice. His confidence, the confidence of her entire fleet, was the key. They were ready. The first salvo came from the Dragon fleet, bright beams of energy slicing through the sky toward Earth. The force of their attack lit up the horizon like a fiery storm, the sky alight with their destructive power. Sarah felt her heart beat faster as the explosions rained down, each one a reminder of what was at stake. "Incoming fire," shouted one of the pilots as a blast from the Dragon ship missed them by mere inches. The ground below erupted as debris flew into the air, a near miss that had sent shockwaves through the base. The first few minutes were chaotic. A wave of fear washed over the fighters as the immense power of the Dragon ships began to take its toll. Earth's defenses seemed so small against the might of the invaders. But then, something began to change. The human fighters were striking back with precision, with a sense of purpose that even the Dragon could not anticipate. One by one, the human jets fired their newly wielded energy weapons. The blasts tore through the air with a sound like thunder, and the Dragon ships began to falter. Explosions rippled through their formations, each blast echoing like a victory cry. "Captain Carter, we've breached their shields." Ryan's voice crackled through the comms. "We've got a shot. We can take them down." The moment they had been waiting for had arrived. The weaponry, powered by their belief, surged with an intensity they hadn't thought possible. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory, and the Dragon were feeling it. Sarah could hear the battle cries of her soldiers through the radio, their voices filled with newfound confidence. The weapons they wielded, alien, untested, were now fully in their control. Each blast was a testament to their unity, their strength, and their refusal to give up. But the Dragon weren't so easily beaten. As the battle raged on, Sarah noticed a shift in their tactics. The invaders seemed to adapt, learning from the human onslaught. Their ships began to weave in and out of the blasts, evading hits with frightening precision. It was clear that the Dragon commanders were no fools. They were regrouping, planning their counterattack. "Watch out. They've adapted," shouted Lieutenant Thomas. "They're going to hit our weak points. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The human forces shifted into high gear. The chaos was dizzying, the air filled with the sound of battle. But through the turmoil, Sarah could see something else, a new fire burning in her soldiers' eyes. They were no longer just responding to the Dragon's strength, they were taking the fight to them. One by one, the Dragon ships fell. First one, then another, and another. The tide was turning. Sarah's chest tightened as the adrenaline surged within her. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, it seemed like they had a chance. Then, something unexpected happened. A massive Dragon flagship emerged from the cloud of smaller ships, its massive frame casting a shadow over the battlefield. It was far larger and more powerful than anything they had faced so far, its weapons glistening with terrifying potential. "We've got a big one coming in." Ryan's voice was strained. "It's going to take everything we've got to bring it down." Sarah's pulse quickened as the flagship fired. The shockwave rattled the entire fleet, and the force of the blast sent several jets spiraling out of control. The Dragon had no intention of giving up so easily. But Sarah wasn't about to back down. "All units, focus fire on the flagship," she commanded, her voice unwavering. We end this here and now. With that, the human fleet converged on the massive Dragon ship, every fighter pouring everything they had into the final push. The energy weapons, their power growing with every blast, tore into the flagship's defenses. Slowly, agonizingly, the ship began to break apart, sparks and debris flying into the air as the final remnants of the Dragon forces began to crumble. At last, the flagship exploded in a spectacular burst of light, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Dragon fleet had been decimated. Sarah's chest heaved as she looked at the remains of the battle. Her hands shook, but there was no time to rest. The victory was theirs, but it was only the beginning. There was still much more to do. As she looked out over the carnage, a wave of exhaustion hit her, but she knew that this was just the start of something much bigger. Humanity had survived. And now, they were ready to strike back, not just to defend Earth, but to take the fight to the very heart of the Dragon Empire. The war wasn't over, but humanity had shown the universe just what they were capable of, and it was a lesson the Dragon would never forget. The sky above Earth was still a smoldering battlefield, the remnants of the once mighty Dragon fleets scattered across the atmosphere. The blast from their flagship had sent a powerful shockwave, leaving debris and wreckage hanging in the air like the twisted remains of a failed invasion. For a moment, Sarah Carter could hardly believe what had just happened. The odds had been stacked against them, but humanity had won. Yet, in the pit of her stomach, she knew this was far from over. They had only struck the first blow against the Dragon Empire, and the universe was far larger than they could even imagine. Sarah's eyes flicked over to the horizon, where the sun was setting, casting an eerie orange glow over the war-torn landscape. The battle had been won, but the war was far from finished. "Captain, we've got multiple ships emerging from the far side of the solar system." Lieutenant Thomas's voice interrupted her thoughts. "It's a fleet, and it's massive. A second wave. Captain, they're coming back for revenge." Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had fought hard for this victory, but this was the moment where humanity would either rise or fall. The Dragon had underestimated Earth's will to fight, but they were not foolish. They would be back, and they would be angrier than before. But they had also underestimated humanity's greatest strength, resilience. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "But we're not going anywhere. We're going to show them that Earth isn't just a planet to conquer. It's a place where wars are fought and won. Now let's get ready to finish this." The human forces, exhausted from their first victory, quickly regrouped. The ships that remained in Earth's orbit had sustained heavy damage, but they were still operational. The crew had proven their bravery, and now they would need to dig deeper than ever before. Sarah looked out the command center's windows at the horizon. The Dragon were coming, but she knew something they didn't. Humanity had been tested, and they had emerged victorious. And now, they would fight to the end. The next few hours were filled with frantic preparations. Repair teams worked around the clock to get the ships in working order, while strategists and commanders worked to devise new tactics. Sarah knew that facing another attack from the Dragon meant they needed to outthink their enemies, to fight smarter and harder. "We need to think differently," Sarah said, turning to her officers. "The Dragon will expect us to defend in the same way as before. We can't give them that. We'll set traps, mislead them, and take them by surprise. This fight isn't just about firepower. It's about outsmarting them and showing them what it means to challenge humanity." The crew members nodded in agreement, the same fire that had burned in their eyes during the first battle now burning even brighter. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about humanity proving that they could not be subdued, not by invaders, not by anyone. Earth wasn't some helpless planet. It was a place where people fought for their homes, their families, and their future.